There's a person in your life right now draining you. You feel it every time they call, every time they need something, every time they pull you into their chaos. And you help them, again and again, because you're good, because you care, because somewhere deep inside, you believe that if you just try hard enough, they'll change. But they won't. And Freud would tell you that your inability to walk away isn't compassion. It's a neurosis. It's a compulsion born from something darker in your own unconscious, something you don't want to face. Sigmund Freud spent his life excavating the hidden chambers of the human psyche. He understood that we are not the rational beings we pretend to be. Beneath our conscious decisions lies a churning ocean of repressed desires, primitive impulses, and defense mechanisms that sabotage us in ways we can't even see. And one of the most dangerous patterns Freud identified was this: the compulsion to rescue those who cannot be saved, the endless attempt to fix the unfixable, to pour yourself into people who are black holes of need. This isn't about being heartless. This is about survival, because there are certain people who will consume you entirely if you let them. People whose psychological structures are so twisted, so deeply entrenched in their own pathology, that any attempt to help them becomes a suicide mission for your own sanity. Freud understood this. He saw patients who couldn't be helped, patients who weaponized therapy itself, patients whose unconscious minds were so committed to their own destruction that they would drag anyone down with them who tried to intervene. So let's talk about the 5 types of toxic people Freud would tell you to never help. Not because they're beyond redemption in some cosmic sense, but because helping them will destroy you. And in the wreckage of your own psyche, you'll realize too late that your compassion was never compassion at all. It was masochism dressed in the clothes of virtue. The first is the person who refuses self-awareness, the one who cannot and will not look inward. Freud built his entire therapeutic method on one foundation: that healing requires the patient to confront their unconscious, to bring into the light those repressed memories, those forbidden desires, those defense mechanisms that keep them trapped. But what happens when someone absolutely refuses to do this? What happens when their entire psychological structure is built on denial? This person will come to you in crisis, always in crisis. Their life is a repeating pattern of disasters, bad relationships, failed jobs, broken friendships, and they'll tell you the story each time, framing themselves as the victim. It's always someone else's fault: the boss who had it out for them, the partner who didn't appreciate them, the world that's unfair. They'll ask for your advice. They'll cry on your shoulder. They'll make you feel needed, and you'll give them everything you have: your time, your emotional energy, your wisdom. And then they'll go out and repeat the exact same pattern again, because they're not actually seeking help. They're seeking validation. They want you to confirm their narrative that they are blameless, that they are powerless. That life simply happens to them. Freud would call this resistance, a defense mechanism so powerful that it makes growth impossible. The ego protects itself from the anxiety of self-examination by projecting all blame outward. And no amount of compassion from you will penetrate that wall. You might think you're helping, but you're not. You're enabling. You're participating in their delusion. And worse, you're training your own psyche to believe that love means endless tolerance for dysfunction. You're teaching yourself that your needs don't matter, that boundaries are cruelty, that exhaustion is virtue. And one day you'll wake up and realize you've sacrificed years of your life to someone who never once asked themselves the one question that could have saved them: what if I'm the problem? The second toxic person is the emotional vampire who feeds on your guilt. This one is more insidious because they understand your weaknesses better than you do. They've mapped your unconscious. They know exactly which buttons to press to make you comply. Freud would recognize this person immediately as someone operating primarily from the ID, that primitive part of the psyche that demands immediate gratification without regard for consequences or others. But here's the twist. They've learned to dress up their ID impulses in the language of need. They're always the victim, always suffering, always in pain. And they've discovered that your superego, that internalized voice of morality and obligation, can be weaponized against you. Every time you try to set a boundary, they know how to make you feel like a monster for having limits. Imagine someone who calls you at 2 in the morning with a crisis. You answer because you care. You stay up listening. You offer support. You sacrifice your sleep, your peace, your own stability. And then a week later, it happens again and again. And when you finally, exhausted, tell them you can't be available at all hours, they respond with wounded outrage. How could you abandon them? Don't you care? After everything they've been through? This is emotional blackmail. And it works because your superego is overdeveloped. You've internalized such rigid standards of goodness that you believe you must be endlessly available, or else you're selfish. But Freud understood that the superego, when too strong, becomes sadistic. It tortures you with impossible standards. It makes you believe that your worth is contingent on how much you sacrifice. The emotional vampire knows this. Consciously or unconsciously, they found someone whose guilt can be exploited. And they will drain you until there's nothing left. They will take your energy, your resources, your sanity, and when you're finally used up, they'll move on to the next host. And you'll be left wondering what happened. Why weren't you enough? Why couldn't you save them? The answer is that you are never meant to. Some people don't want to be saved. They want to feed. And your willingness to be consumed doesn't make you noble. It makes you a victim of your own unconscious masochism. The third toxic person is the one addicted to chaos. Freud spoke of the death drive, thanatos, that unconscious compulsion toward destruction that exists in all of us. In most people, this drive is balanced by eros, the life drive, the instinct toward growth and connection. But in some people, thanatos dominates. They are unconsciously committed to their own destruction, and they will create chaos wherever they go. This person is exciting at first. They're intense, passionate. They make you feel alive. There's always drama, always stakes, always some situation that needs your intervention. They pull you into their world of crisis and urgency. And it's intoxicating because it makes you feel important, needed, essential. But here's what you don't realize until it's too late. The chaos isn't circumstantial. It's manufactured. Unconsciously, they create disasters because disaster is the only state in which they feel real. Calm terrifies them. Stability feels like death. So they sabotage. They pick fights. They make catastrophically bad decisions. They burn their lives down over and over again. And they want you there to watch it burn. You think you can bring stability to their life. You think your love, your support, your steady presence will be the anchor they need. But Freud would tell you that you're delusional. You're not an anchor. You're a prop in their psychodrama. You're part of the chaos now. And the more you try to stabilize them, the more they'll escalate, because unconsciously, they need to defeat your efforts. They need to prove that they're beyond saving, that destruction is their destiny. This is the repetition compulsion Freud identified, the unconscious drive to recreate traumatic situations over and over, hoping for a different outcome, but ensuring the same result. And when you attach yourself to someone in the grip of this compulsion, you become part of the cycle. You'll exhaust yourself trying to break a pattern that they are fundamentally committed to repeating. Walk away. Not because they're bad, but because their unconscious has made a choice that supersedes anything their conscious mind might want. And you cannot love someone out of their death drive. You can only die alongside them. The fourth is the narcissist who uses you as a mirror. Freud understood narcissism not as vanity, but as a developmental arrest. The narcissist's libido never moved beyond the self. They cannot truly see other people as separate beings with their own inner lives. You are not a person to them. You are an object, a reflection, a tool for regulating their fragile ego. This person will make you feel special at first. They'll idealize you. You're perfect, amazing, everything they've ever wanted. This is the love-bombing phase, and it's intoxicating because finally someone sees you. But what they're actually seeing is a projected fantasy. You're not real to them. You're a screen onto which they project their needs. And the moment you deviate from that fantasy, the moment you reveal your actual humanity, your needs, your limitations, the devaluation begins. Suddenly, you're worthless, disappointing, the problem. And you'll find yourself desperately trying to get back to that initial idealization. You'll contort yourself. You'll suppress your needs. You'll become smaller and smaller, trying to fit into the shape they've assigned you. Freud would tell you this is a doomed project. The narcissist cannot love you because they cannot perceive you. Their ego is so fragile that it requires constant external validation to maintain its coherence. You are not a partner. You are supply. And when you run out, when you're depleted, they will discard you and find someone new to fill that role. You might think that if you're patient enough, understanding enough, they'll finally see you, but they won't. Because seeing you would require them to acknowledge that you exist separately from their needs. It would require empathy, and empathy requires a level of psychological development they haven't achieved. Helping a narcissist means sacrificing your selfhood on the altar of their ego. It means accepting that you will never be truly known, never be truly valued. You will only ever be a function, and your unconscious will bear the scars of that erasure long after you finally escape. The fifth and most dangerous is the person who makes you their reason for living. This sounds romantic. Noble even. Someone needs you so completely, depends on you so utterly. Surely that's love, right? Freud would call it psychological imprisonment. When someone makes you responsible for their existence, they're not offering love. They're offering a hostage situation. This person will tell you they can't live without you, that you're the only thing keeping them going, that if you leave, if you set boundaries, if you prioritize your own life, they'll fall apart. Maybe they'll explicitly threaten self-harm. Maybe they'll just imply it through their helplessness. Either way, the message is clear. You are not free to leave. Your life is no longer yours. Freud understood that healthy psychological development requires separation. The child must eventually separate from the mother. The adult must individuate. But some people never complete this process. They remain psychologically fused, desperately seeking someone to replace the original attachment figure. And when they find you, they latch on with the intensity of an infant who believes separation means death. This isn't love. This is regression. This is someone who has collapsed back into an infantile state where the other person is experienced not as separate, but as an extension of the self. And when you're trapped in this dynamic, you become the parent of an adult. You become responsible for their emotional regulation, their survival, their entire sense of reality. You might feel needed, important, irreplaceable. But underneath that, if you're honest, you feel trapped, suffocated, resentful, because you are. You've been conscripted into someone else's psychological structure. Your role is not to live your own life, but to prevent theirs from collapsing. And the moment you try to reclaim your autonomy, you're met with panic, rage, or manipulation designed to pull you back in. Freud would tell you that you cannot individuate for someone else. You cannot complete their psychological development. You cannot be their ego. And every day you stay in this dynamic, you're not helping them. You're enabling their regression. You're confirming their unconscious belief that they cannot survive without fusion. And you're teaching your own unconscious that love means self-annihilation. So what do all these people have in common? What makes them unhelpable? It's this: they are all unconsciously committed to their pathology. Their entire psychological structure depends on maintaining the very patterns that destroy them. And on some level, they know that real help, real change, would require them to confront parts of themselves they've spent their entire lives avoiding. Freud believed that the unconscious always wins. You can't willpower your way past it. You can't love someone out of their defenses. You can't save someone who is fundamentally at war with their own salvation. And when you try, you don't elevate them. You descend into their pathology. You become part of the dysfunction. This is what Freud meant by resistance. It's not just refusing therapy. It's the unconscious mind's commitment to protecting itself from change, even when that change would mean liberation. And some people's resistance is so total, so absolute, that any attempt to help them becomes an exercise in futility that destroys the helper. You might be thinking this sounds cruel, heartless. How can we just abandon people who are suffering? But here's the dark truth Freud understood, and most of us refuse to face. Suffering is sometimes a choice. Not a conscious choice, but an unconscious one. Some people would rather suffer in familiar ways than heal in unfamiliar ones. Some people prefer the devil they know, and they will sacrifice anyone who threatens to disrupt that arrangement. Your compassion is not infinite. Your energy is not limitless. Your psyche can only withstand so much before it starts to fracture. And when you pour yourself into people who cannot receive what you're offering, you're not being virtuous. You're being self-destructive. You're acting out your own unconscious patterns of masochism, guilt, or savior complexes. Freud would ask you, why do you need to help the unhelpable? What does it give you? What does it let you avoid in your own life? Maybe helping others lets you avoid facing your own pain. Maybe their chaos distracts you from your own. Maybe their need makes you feel valuable in a way nothing else does. These are not reasons to help. These are reasons to seek therapy. Real compassion requires discernment. It requires the wisdom to know when help is possible and when it's poison. It requires the strength to walk away from people whose unconscious is committed to destruction. Not because you don't care, but because you care about yourself enough not to be collateral damage in someone else's psychological warfare. Freud spent his life in the darkness of the human psyche. He saw things most people refuse to see. He understood that we are not rational. We are not in control. We are driven by forces we don't understand toward outcomes we don't want. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is refuse to participate in someone else's self-destruction. So if there's someone in your life draining you, ask yourself, are they seeking real help, or are they seeking an audience for their suffering? Are they willing to look inward, or do they need you to confirm that looking outward is enough? Are they committed to growth, or are they committed to staying exactly where they are while complaining about it? And if the answer is the latter, if you realize you're dealing with one of these 5 types, you have a choice to make. You can stay and watch yourself disappear. You can martyr yourself on the altar of their dysfunction. You can tell yourself that love means endless self-sacrifice. Or you can do what Freud would do. You can recognize that some battles cannot be won. Some people cannot be saved. And walking away is not abandonment. It's the only sane response to insanity. Because here's the final truth. You cannot heal someone who is using their wound as a weapon. You cannot save someone who has made their suffering their identity. You cannot love someone out of patterns they are unconsciously committed to maintaining. And every moment you spend trying is a moment stolen from your own life, your own growth, your own chance at peace. Freud would tell you to save yourself. not because the other person doesn't deserve help, but because you deserve a life that isn't defined by other people's pathology. You deserve relationships that nourish rather than deplete. You deserve to pour your energy into people who can receive it, who can grow from it, who can reciprocate it. The darkness in other people is not yours to fix, and pretending it doesn't make you compassionate. It makes you complicit in your own destruction. So choose carefully, choose wisely. And when you encounter someone who pulls you toward their chaos, remember, the most radical act of self-love is sometimes the word no. Your unconscious is watching. It's learning what you'll tolerate, what patterns you'll accept, what price you're willing to pay for the illusion of being needed. And it will shape your future based on the choices you make today. Choose a future where you're not drowning in someone else's darkness. Choose a future where your compassion is reserved for those who can receive it without destroying you. Because in the end, Freud understood something most people never learn. You cannot save anyone who doesn't want to be saved, and trying to will cost you everything. The question is whether you'll realize that before there's nothing left of you to salvage. The darkness is patient. It will wait. It will take everything you offer, and it will ask for more. So walk away, save yourself, and let the unhelpable face the only person who can actually help them, themselves.